to grant the public access to public lands. So we're blessed in British Columbia with a vast public land space, and it's an amazing province where every corner you turn, it's absolutely gorgeous. So access is pretty important. And everything else that we do in the association is to support that primary objective, public access to public lands and our advocacy.
Are you into four-wheeling, camping, and exploring? How about off-road racing like mud bogs, short course wheel-to-wheel racing, or even desert races? Well, you've come to the right place. Welcome to 4x4 Canada podcast. My name is Wes, and I've been four-wheeling since I was 6 weeks old. I have over 20 years experience in 4x4 shops, many more than that in the off-road racing, and a lifetime of exploring the backcountry across Canada. Every week, we bring you a new guest where they give you their perspective on the industry. We discuss everything from four-wheeling, overlanding, every form of off-road racing across this great country, as well as we talk to Canadian manufacturers and 4x4 shops. Just a quick reminder that if you're looking for more episodes, you can find all of our episodes on 4x4canadapodcast.com or your favorite podcast sharing platform. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at 4x4canadapodcast.com. Now let's get to the show. Our guest today has a long history of working with four-wheelers and other outdoor groups to help keep public access open to public lands. Kim Reeves, welcome to the 4x4 Canada podcast.
Hey, Wes, thanks for having me.
Many people know you as the president of the Four-Wheel Drive Association of BC for over 10 years now. We've got so much to discuss about the association, and we'll get to that real quick. However, there's something I want to get out in the open right from the beginning. You have a sickness. You're ill. This addiction to Toyota Land Cruisers is conflicting. It can be expensive. However, it's what brings you pleasure and it has introduced you to so many new friends. How many Land Cruisers do you currently have?
I don't know how to answer that.
Is your wife around?
She's complicit. I would say like 7. But I do have parts vehicles as well to support that because oddly enough, the Land Cruisers that we got into in the beginning were 24-volt rigs. And it's hard to come by 24-volt electronics because the last they were sold here in Canada was 1987. So way back when parked trucks were cheap, you could pick up a rusted out Hulk with all the electronics in it for, $400. So I got a couple of those just to have parts on the shelf.
I know you've got a couple really nice ones. Do you still have the red one, red and white? What's typically known as the Iron Pig?
The Iron Pig. I still have it. 1971 FJ55 Toyota Land Cruiser out of Abilene, Texas. It was a ranch truck for, I think, 2 different ranches, about 7,000 miles each. And then there's only 19,000 and change in miles on it right now.
Wow.
And the rest was put on in the last 20 years, I guess, kind of in very small bits here and there across North America. But it currently resides.
That's a beautiful rig.
Yeah. Those in the Toyota Land Cruiser community would know it as Wilbur. So
that's the nickname I was trying to think of. And then you've got your daily or one that you use the most often. And what's that one?
Yeah, my original truck was an HJ60, but I did a body frame swap in 2010, so it's an HJ62 with some 61 series stuff merged into it. So my 60 series is I've had that truck for over 20 years, and it's my daily and my backcountry RV, as I call it. My wife has, I guess, an FJ80, but it also has a 6-cylinder turbo diesel in it, so it's a lovely truck. And
so how did you get into the Land Cruisers? I know you grew up on the East Coast. Did you grow up in a four-wheeling family, or is this something that happened when you moved out to the best part of the country?
Yeah, this is when I moved out west. No, I didn't grow up in a four-wheel drive family. It's more hobby farm and driving tractors and things like that. There's some muscle car addiction in my family where my oldest brother had a 71 Super Bee, so that was an interesting car. And when I moved out west, I was into the motorsports more, NHRA, IHBA, the hot boats, stuff like that, drag stuff. And then after having family and kids, I guess it was right around 2000 that we ended up buying a Land Cruiser. oddly enough, I thought they would be interesting, and my wife agreed. So we were on the same page. We ended up buying this old rusty truck.
That's what started it all.
Yeah, it was downhill
So
from there.
exactly. So you joined the Coastal Cruisers, which is a BC based Land Cruiser club. And you're involved with them, I guess, for a few years. And that introduced you to the Four Wheel Drivers Association of BC.
Exactly. Yeah. Joined the Cruisers in '06, I think. Great club, is still a member, although it's kind of evolved from a 4x4 club into a custom car club, because Land Cruisers have changed quite a bit between the last 15, 20 years. As soon as I became a member, I became aware of the Four Wheel Drive Association and recognized the need for it, then volunteered to be the club liaison to the Four Wheel Drive Association. So I kind of bring information back and forth. And then I made the mistake of going to a meeting and immediately ended up on the board. That was '09. I was secretary for a year. And then since 2010, I've been president. So this is my 7th go around, I think, as president.
10 years. Yeah. So not all of our listeners know much about the Four Wheel Drive Association of BC. We have a lot of listeners on the other side of the Rockies. What's the association about? Let's hear your elevator pitch about the association.
Against gates going up and 4 gates to come down to grant the public access to public lands. So we're blessed in British Columbia with a vast public land space, and it's an amazing province where every corner you turn, it's absolutely gorgeous. So access is pretty important. And everything else that we do in the association is to support that primary objective, public access to public lands, and our advocacy. So we do some recreation site management around the province. So old wilderness recreation sites, or forestry sites, as they used to be called. Yeah, we've got probably 15 to 20 of those in our portfolio, where their members go on a day trip and take care of these sites free for public use. So it's just good public works for public benefit type stuff. As you know, you were involved in us adopting a fire tower from BC Parks. That's our 3rd fire tower in our portfolio. Yeah, but first with BC Parks. So I believe that's BC Parks' first partnership agreement with a motorized group, if I understand correctly.
That's my understanding as well, too.
Yeah.
And we'll get into that one in a second. The association is definitely grown in the last 5-6 years, and I don't know how much of that is based for social media or whatever, but the association, what's the membership up around now?
I believe our membership is around 4,500 paid members.
That's great. I remember back in the 90s, before I moved back east, that we were lucky to have 50 members at that time. And the association, just to explain to the listeners, the association has been around since 1977, and it's had a lot of ups and it's had a few downs as well. And the great volunteers have really brought it up in the last 8 years, 10 years, have brought the membership up. What is some of the reasons, like if somebody's thinking, maybe I should join, I'm trying to think of how to word this properly, but what is some of the reasons that somebody should join the association and become involved in the association?
Well, it's a good question. There's many reasons. There's selfish reasons. There's reasons that help other people. There are reasons that help people you'll never meet. Like I say, with the recreation site adoption, these are free sites. Our members and volunteers go and take care of them and make them decent for people that are coming and they don't know. We have kids programs where we take kids that may have never been in a motor vehicle, let alone a 4x4 now, with the changing of the ways things are, especially in the cities. Kids out for a day in the backcountry. I remember we did a picnic for families and kids in 2019, just before COVID. And I was standing there cooking away at the barbecue and watching, there's 20 kids and probably 20 adults, and they're all playing around. And I saw some kids building a raft. And, these are things that I hadn't seen in ages. Folks making up games, talking to each other, a lot of fun. And it was mid-afternoon. I noticed nobody had a phone in their hand. And I thought, there's big value here. And I can't put my finger on it because you can't measure these things without an economic value, right? But
Yeah.
there's something there, kids making a raft. Like, anyway,
Who does that in 2019, right?
well, indeed, like this is a great thing. That's what I
Yeah.
thought when I was watching it. There are cleanup events if people want to make a difference, mitigating the impact of some of our less caring members of society. On the selfish side, you get member benefits, advantages at buying parts or things at some of our corporate members. There are so many different reasons. There's take advantage of learning how to drive off road or recover in our Wheeling Wisely off-road driving and recovery programs that we built up over the last 5 years.
I did forget to mention it earlier, and we'll put it in the show notes, but people can check out the 4wdabc.ca. Thank you. And as well as there's numerous groups on Facebook as well. And there's the main one, the Four-Wheel Drive Association BC group, but there's also subgroups based on the different areas. So, Squamish or the Thompson Nicola, the Okanagan up north, etc. And that was brought on to help so that some of the talk, say from Prince George, didn't get lost in the talk down the coast, etc. So if it's a good idea to check out your local group as well. And you'll find a lot more of information about what's happening on in your area.
You asked me about Facebook and social media, whether that was driving our growth.
Mm-hmm.
I would have to say, yes, it does. It was interesting in the forum world. We never really got a lot of traction in the forum world. Discussions always seem to happen in the clubs or the vehicle-specific forums because people are really looking for two things. They're looking for tech on their vehicle, and they were looking to go on a trail run.
Right.
These are the two things that really killed the brick-and-mortar clubs because their tech and their trail runs went online. So the forums were the first to kill the brick-and-mortar clubs, and then social media killed the forums. So we benefited from adopting Facebook extremely early. We jumped in, I think, in about 2011 with both feet. And we were on Facebook long before all the wheelers were on Facebook. And as the world changed and social media took over, we were the first stop for wheelers. So that got us more eyes on us. And then we were able to sell, or I guess, show the value of a membership. So when I took over in 2010, I think we were down to about 30 members. And, we had big growth for a lot of years, 80% a year over year for a lot of years.
Yeah.
And then some plateaus when we're trying to sort out what all this growth meant and the work in the background. And then COVID hit and we grew crazy. We almost doubled.
Wow.
And now we're still trying to catch up with that bump. So,
yeah, there's definitely some learning curves happening, whether it be membership or clothing, etc. And it's just learning curves, unfortunately. And you're dealing with volunteers, and everybody has day jobs.
Well, when you have a volunteer organization that aspires to represent the wheelers in a province the size of British Columbia, which is bigger than France and Germany combined, on a volunteer budget, so we don't have no paid staff, and we aspire to do all that, it's essentially impossible, Wes. I've thought about this numerous times. Everything that we're accomplishing is really close to impossible. Mm-hmm. They bring all kinds of challenges, but on the flip side, we have a lot of successes to make it all worthwhile. And we've got an amazing crew of volunteers, yourself included, that are, the foundation of what this organization is. And it's just all these people are taking care of things in their own locales, things that should be done. And we happen to be lucky enough to be able to provide a vehicle to accomplish it, pardon the pun.
Yeah, I think it definitely stands to the volunteers of what the association has done in the last 5-10 years. We'll hop right into some of those rec sites and the fire lookouts and basically all those rec sites you got across BC. There's everything from Chetwynd to stuff happening on the island to stuff happening on East Kootenays to, right in the middle in the Okanagan and Thompson Nicola region. There's always lots of talk about Stave Lake down at the coast. I'm an interior guy and I don't like mud. So I don't really know much about Stave, but I hear a lot about it. What's it all about? And what's the association's involvement with what's going on there?
Stave Lake. Well, Stave Lake is ironically where I cut my teeth in this organization. The first, it was the biggest, it's the largest motorized recreation area in the province with the highest concentration of 4x4 vehicles and 4x4 recreation in the province. And it was kind of smeared with the reputation of a whole amalgam of things that were occurring, from garbage dumping, which is being close to a urban population. You have some residents that dump garbage. You got some commercial guys that dump garbage, and then you've got shooting waste, and you've got drug lab waste, and you've got garden waste and clippings and invasive species. And then the party waste happens, right? And then you've got illegal shooting, and then you've got kids that would, I guess, criminals actually, that would steal cars, go beat the hell out of them, and set them on fire.
Yeah.
You've got people that would show up a Friday night and have a big pallet fire and a piss up. And then you had motorized recreation, quads, dirt bikes, 4x4s, kids learning how to quad or dirt bike, lots of family motorized recreation, right? Stuff that, you and I grew up with. No day, good stuff.
Yep.
So we were really tainted by all of these other things happening. And over the period of 2009 through 2019, it was a lot of meetings just trying to hold back the closure of that area. It never seemed possible. It was quite common to be in a room in a public meeting or a strategy meeting, and there'd be 17 people against motorized and me, right? And tough to navigate your way through that, and especially as a rookie, which I was no rookie at the end of it, I tell you that. But we managed to keep it. So what are the mudflats at Stave Lake? Absolutely amazing area where there's the biggest of the mud trucks to everybody that just likes to try their vehicle in mud. It's really popular. I hate mud too, and a Land Cruiser guy, the website, I hate mud. It's one of the classics. But yeah, it's worked out well. We even have a partnership agreement on the recreation site on the mud flats. So in the summertime, the flats are covered with water, and you've got glamping, regular campsite stuff, and no real motorized recreation on the flats because they're covered in water. So we take it over like end of September, and we give it back prior to May long when the flats are exposed. And it's a definite win-win. So
yeah, I've seen a lot of videos, and like you say, there'd be anything from the big mud trucks, big 44s, or even bigger, some of the mega trucks and that, right out to people running around on quads or stock Toyota pickup or a Suzuki Samurai or whatever. And I have to admit, it does look like a lot of fun. And I know that the association spent a lot of time working with other organizations in that area to try and keep that open. And I would definitely say that is a win in your guys' book. It's
huge.
A never-ending struggle, but I'd count that one as a win for sure.
If we don't count it as a win, I don't know what a win is.
Exactly. As you know, I've been involved in the association for a number of years, and the one thing that I'm seeing now is that through the work of all the hard working volunteers over the years is before you go into a meeting and they hear, oh, you're a 4x4 guy, and they almost turn your back on you kind of idea. Now you walk in and there's a certain amount of respect. And that's because of things like Stave Lake. That's because of the fire lookouts. That's because of all the rec sites that the association has and all the hard work the volunteers have. Everybody sees the Full Drive Association BC on social media and that, but what they don't see is the amount of respect that we have gathered from not only government employees, but also other organizations, even hiking organizations and things like that. There's a certain amount of respect now that we have that wasn't always there. And that's just because of all the hard work of the volunteers.
Yeah, it is. There's a lot of things behind that. As an organization, we've always really gone hard on being respectful in all of our communications, whether online or in person. I think I think they're all the same. And I've always conducted myself that way. And I always try to encourage others to as well. And that goes for meetings too. We're respectful, but we're also assertive. We have every right to exist. We're good people. Four wheelers are good people, just like every recreation group is populated by good people. Sure, there's a couple of bad apples, but that's true in every rec organization, every nonprofit, even citizens in our country and inner city. We all see the same things. So it's not a recreation discipline problem. It's a population problem.
Yeah.
So once you get over that and you realize you build a relationship with somebody, and, it's harder to be dismissive of somebody that you know their name, that they're decent and honest and kind and respectful and considerate. It's a much better starting place than you guys in those trucks, right?
I've seen it myself here with the Camels 4x4 Club, and then later more work with the Four-Wheel Drive Association of BC. But I remember going to a cleanup done by the Naturalist Club, and we were winching out vehicles from ravines and stuff like that. And with the amount of garbage that we took out, they were just blindsided by it kind of almost. And they end up coming to our cleanups, coming to help us kind of idea, and working that partnership back and forth.
That was exactly what I had in mind when I was talking with. So is that exact example? So I appreciate you bringing it up.
So there's a couple different programs that the association has done. You mentioned gates earlier and how much you dislike gates, but there's a couple programs where the association is using gates in a positive way. Let's talk about Eagle.
Eagle Mountain is an area that's just above the old Westwood Plateau Raceway in Coquitlam, British Columbia. A long-time motorized area. Now it's filled with mansions, and we drive through those and into the trail system just behind that. It's short, but it has always been a sweet trail. So it used to be like an intermediate style 4x4 trail that we lost access to in around 2000 and by a gate. And we didn't have legitimate access until 2010, when we finally got access back through a key program led by City of Coquitlam. There had been bypasses created, of course, underneath hydro lines to access into this trail system. So it's kind of a cat and mouse game that develops when a gate goes up.
Yeah.
So after 10 years of no access, many parties came together to deal with, seeing what we could do about regaining access. And it was complicated because I think there were 6 parties to that conversation. There was Ministry of Forests, there was BC Hydro, there was BC Parks, there was Metro Vancouver, the golf course, City of Coquitlam. There's a watershed in there for a reservoir, and then there was us. So I guess that's 6 or 7. That resulted in a key access program. So we had physical keys for years and went through lock problems and lock disappearing and weld the lock to the gate, and that all worked fairly well until 2017-18, when it was discovered, I guess, the road was never decommissioned properly. There was a number of things that went on, and it resulted in the Ministry of Forests getting the road recommissioned to decommission it properly. So they had to build a road to remove the road, as odd as that sounds. And it looked like we were going to lose access through that process, but we were fortunate enough to, I guess, appeal to reason, and we got key access going again. We had a Bluetooth lock, and then the City of Coquitlam didn't want to do that anymore, and we kind of reluctantly took over the program.
Mm-hmm.
Why I say reluctantly is we go back to the very beginning of this conversation. I said we're access advocates, and that's what our reason for existence, and public access to public land. So if we manage a gate, the only people that we can really efficiently allow are members through some kind of a system. So obviously that is in favor of our members and not so much in the general public. So
right.
We, as a last ditch, we took on the management of that gate. It's not what we advocate for. However, faced with no access or manage the access, we chose to manage the access. So
Yeah, I think it's a matter of picking the best of two bad options.
exactly, that's where we were. And so now we're going to try to make the best of it. We'll take our warts online and in the public because it does disagree a bit with our core mandate. Not a bit, it does disagree with it. And I acknowledge
Yeah.
that. However, the best of the two bad options. So we're going to make lemonade with that one and to try to make it so our goal is to make it a decent intermediate trail again. And I guess it's 3 years now with COVID, things kind of blur. I don't know exactly how to pinpoint in time. I'm losing it, Wes. It's about 3 years now. So we'll be making requests to start adding obstacles. So it'd be nice. It's a hot, heavy rainfall zone, so we have to be careful about water and water movement and things like that. But we're pretty confident we can start building some more obstacles in there to bring some excitement back to intermediate wheeling in that area.
Yeah. Isn't it a bit of a difficult, isn't it like a 35s and locker already, or I may think of something else.
Yeah. So that was the criteria. So this takes me back many years to city. They said, okay, what kind of criteria should we have to access? And at that time, there was a pretty serious gatekeeping obstacle.
Okay.
A gnarly rock, and you couldn't avoid it because the bypass had kind of eroded away as well. So, and it's on a shelf road with a cliff rock face on one side and a cliff on the other. So if you're going through, you're committed to dealing with the obstacle itself.
Yeah.
And so I went and I thought about it, like, how do you make a criteria? Because as you know, so much of this is driver dependent and, how good are you picking lines? And, one guy's 35 and lockers is another guy's 33s and open, and it depends on the vehicle and departure angle,
wheelbase and
brake over and, exactly. All the things, width of the vehicle. So that's what I got down to. Simple criteria, 33s and blockers. And no, 33s and 12 inches of clearance, actually. I think that's what
Is that what it was? Okay.
Yeah. and then also at your own risk, right?
Right. Yeah.
So that's we've just carried that forward, right?
Yeah. Okay. So as we know, the Full Drive Association of BC encompasses all of BC. Let's move north. We've got some wreck sites up in Chetwynd area, and also the first 5 kilometers or so of the Alexander Mackenzie Trail. Let's talk about that Alexander Mackenzie Trail. It's a significantly historical trail in BC. What can you tell our listeners about that?
Well, we were honored to have the opportunity to adopt and partner on such a historic trail. The Alexander Mackenzie Trail, or the New Hulk Carrier Grease Trail, is a trail that dates back long before any written record and well into the verbal record of First Nations. And this is the trail that Alexander Mackenzie first traversed to reach the Pacific Ocean in, I should have looked it up, 18 something.
A long time ago.
Yeah. And there used to be a wreck site right on the banks of the Fraser and the Blackwater River, very close to there. And this is where apparently Mackenzie stepped out of the river and then carried on to the Pacific on foot. So we adopted that site I think that one's 2019 as well.
I think
so. Again, though, I'm looking through the blurred period of COVID. But we're dealing with some issues there because the bank at 0K on the Fraser, it's on a bend of the river and it's slumping fairly extensively near the end of that road, and it threatens the wreck site. So we're still looking at whether we can recover the use of the old wreck site or whether we have to make other options, other plans there.
Right.
This is on our list of forays into affiliation too. Talking before it's happening, which is probably really bad form. But we need to start building relationships with local First Nations. And as I mentioned, the New Hulk Carrier Grease Trail, this is where Ulichin Grease was traded from the ocean, the coast, to inland neighboring nations. So, it's fairly significant spot. That's what's happening there.
Yeah.
There was a
A lot
wreck
of
site
history
that
there.
was at the 2 or 3K mark, I think, that was refurbished and remaintained 2 years ago. And so we're doing what we can there right now.
Yep. And again,
you
the Chetwynd area, there's a few new ones up there, and then same thing in 2019 or 2020 that I know we've gotten 2 or 3 up there as well. And I have to admit, that's an area I want to visit. I haven't been up there, and that's on my list to visit up north.
Well, you're in luck, because I believe there's some maintenance work going on next summer. So
there we go.
Just had to drop that in the Windfall
book
Creek.
At the same time.
Yeah, Windfall Creek is one. I think it was, you're right, 2018 or 19, we adopted that. My wife and I, on a trip back from Manitoba in 2019, we stopped in and assisted Leah McQueen, our local rep, and some local volunteers on a work party on that site. A beautiful spot. And Boulder Creek, I think not too far away from Windfall Creek, is up a pretty good 4x4 trail, I hear, is another site. And I believe that came online just last year. So we had our first work party up there in summer 2022. Yeah, so it's quite exciting to have those sites on board, because, it's easy to say we want to be regional, we want to cover all the province, but it's a whole different thing to try to, like I say, a province as big as BC, to cover all the regions. And everything in this province is driven, and our organization is driven by locals.
Yeah.
And, the big Four-Wheel Drive Association and, me, some guy in the Lower Mainland, we can support the locals who know their issues. And that's really the kind of format that we're working with.
Yeah, definitely. The latest addition to the long list of rec sites is Three Sisters rec site near Ashcroft, which is at the base of Cornwall Mountain, which we have the maintenance contract for the Cornwall Fire Lookout. So, as you know, we just signed recently the maintenance contract for that one. So that's a neat little one. It's a small rec site right at the base of Cornwall, which as soon as our contact in BC Parks heard that there's an opening, or they wanted somebody to maintain that, she instantly thought of the Four-Wheel Drive Association. She said it just ties right in together. So not only do we have the Fire Lookout with contract with BC Parks, which, as you mentioned earlier, is the first BC Parks has had with a motorized group, but we also have a 3-way partnership with the Sites and Trails for the rec site down at Three Sisters. So it's a Sites and Trail and BC Parks and Four-Wheel Drive Association of BC partnership on this together. So it took a year and a half, almost 2 years, to get that contract going and signed. And that just goes to show that people, it's not just as simple as walking in and saying, hey, we want to maintain this. It's that building of relationships. It's that government red tape. It's, 18 people looking at a contract and, making one change. It's got to go back through the whole cycle again. But yeah, pretty happy to say that we do have that Three Sisters rec site, and it's a neat tie-in with Cornwall for sure. So
spectacular. I can't tell you the number of times that I said that this advocacy game is not short term, it's long term. And anybody that steps in and thinks, well, I'm going to change this right now is, probably deluded. It's going to take slow and continuous effort in a direction. And like you say, respectful communication, following through on commitments year over year over year. It takes time. And then all of a sudden there's all these opportunities, because you've already nailed down the respect and trust, and you're not going to make somebody else look bad by signing an agreement with you or something. And let's face it, these things won't exist if we don't take them over. Like, these fire towers will be gone in no time. If the volunteer community, nonprofit world didn't take these things on, these fantastic pieces of BC forestry history will be lost.
Yeah, definitely. And there's other good organizations like some of the quad clubs and that maintain other ones. But I do want to mention to people, if there is something in your area happening, whether it be a lookout or a rec site or whatever, that you think can use some help, by all means, don't be afraid to step in and, volunteer to work with the association on helping keeping that alive. I mean, and that's exactly what happened with Cornwall, right? I saw in the paper that it was going to be demolished. And that's when I made some phone calls and got a hold of the right people to talk to, and then brought the association in. And we had that for 5 years, I think now, right? But it's up to people in that local area. They know what's happening in their area. They know what has the possibility of being torn down or whatever. And the association really, really relies on local volunteers to drive what's going on.
It has to be. You're so right. Mount Lavina is the very same thing. One of our members up there, Paul, saw it in a local Pennywise paper that looking for a group to do this. Otherwise, it's going to be torn down and access is going to be lost. So,
exactly. Yep.
Yeah. So, local initiative and action with provincial support, with resources and advice, and perhaps actions and reputation.
Yep.
It's all these things
100%.
together. So we're trying to. That's the best model we've come up with.
Yeah, I think it works well. Now, speaking of Lavina, I got to say that's got the best view of the 3 fire lookouts that we deal with by far. So,
something else, isn't it?
If you haven't been to it, folks, if you have not been to it, it's over by Caslow. You got to check it out. The view is just absolutely incredible. Now, then the Hatlich Fire Lookout near Boston Bar, that I know was the first one that the association took over, but they didn't just take it over. You guys rebuilt that thing from the ground up.
Yeah. Yeah. Crazy. So, Wes, this is in the early days, my very early days. In 2011, we had successfully constructed the Hale Creek shelter. And then that was in September. So, beautiful log structure overlooking Harrison Lake. And, we're pretty pleased with pulling that one off. And seeing that success, the ministry, the rec officer at the time, said to me, well, we've got this fire tower. It's in disrepair. What do you think about doing a renovation next year? And I said what I have come to be known as saying, that, sure, we can do that. No problem, whatever. We'll figure it out later. Anyway, over the winter, it had fallen over, I guess, under the snow load. And we went and saw it when the snow broke and we could access it. And it's just nothing but a pile of rubble. So the rec officer's plan was they wanted to refurbish a few of these towers for Forestry's 100th birthday.
Right.
Well, there's no tower there. So he got together a small budget, something like $25,000. And our organization and another organization called SWAT, Southwest All Terrain Trails, quad guys that we worked pretty good with for a lot of years, we took it on. So we had building a fire tower at 5,000 or 6,000 feet elevation, long ways away from any power source. It's 40 degrees Celsius this weekend. And there's not many things more difficult than doing a project like that when you're organizing trades, equipment, and material and transport on the volunteer dime, right? So you need a framer. You actually need 2 because one might not be able to show up. So everything you had to have in duplicate because you don't have contracts. You don't have all the things we have in the business world to say this is going to happen on that. Yeah. So that was quite a thing. We managed over, I think it was 5 weekends over 2 months that we pretty much had that thing finished.
Yep.
From beginning to end with painted, sealed up, lock up. Well, not lock up because it's been open ever since. It's open to anybody go to visit. But spectacular project. We had a friend of mine from the Cruiser Club is a professional chef, and we've utilized him. We kind of tripped over it as these projects happened, that him and my wife, she just assisted, and they took care of all the food, which freed 30, 40, 50 people up from making their own food, which creates an awful lot of free time to work. So we had the crews working and we're fed like kings, and there's nothing better than doing something for somebody else, for no reason, eating like a king in the fresh air, a couple of refreshments. It's spectacular. As you know, spectacular stuff.
Yeah, it's a beautiful lookout. And I know there's maintenance on it every year to keep it looking that way for sure. One thing I do want to mention too is there is maintenance days for the fire lookouts. There's maintenance days for the wreck sites and such. Now, if people do happen to see that come up on, whether it be on Facebook main group or their local group or wherever, don't be afraid about showing up or don't be afraid that, hey, you're not a framer or you're not a carpenter or you're not a painter or whatever. There's always work to do. And the leader for that day will assign you work. And what I've found is that, we've actually at Cornwall, for example, we've had locals come up that are not part of the association, but they just want to come up and help. And we've seen some friendships form that have now become, 3, 4, 5 year long friendships that have been formed because they didn't know anybody, but they just showed up to help. And so you're not only getting friendship, but you're also, like you say, out in the fresh air and you're helping a good cause. And if you're interested, just show up and we'll put you to work.
Tell you, in my 15, 16 years in the association, that accounts for a good period of the time I've been in the backcountry. Almost all of my close friendships are from this world.
Yep.
I've seen so many people come into this recreation, build friend groups that are core to their lives, and this is not uncommon or just happens once in a while. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
I see it again and again and again. And I look around at the friend groups that I see, and it's something else, Wes. That's another of the intangible parts or value that is gained and you don't even notice, just from participating in this particular world. We have a really good group, and it definitely impacts people's lives.
So speaking of that, I know at the coast, you guys do some different runs. So there's the newbie runs and a few other things. And I know there's been a few of those other events around the interior as well. And I think those are a great idea. So whether it be something whether you classify it as a newbie run or however you want to classify whatever run that people are organizing, I think that's a great way for getting people out and introducing and meeting other people.
It totally is. I'll give you some advice, and for anybody who listens to this, if you want a lot of people to come to your run, call it a newbie run. If you don't want a lot of people to come to your run, call it a maintenance run. Right? Oh, we're going to do work. Well, maybe we won't get so many people. No, I'm kind of kidding, kind of not. But yeah, we get quite a bit done. We always used to call these. What was it? I inherited the West Harrison run. So beginner stock run, BSR, beginner stock run, maintenance run. So we had, initially, 2006, 7, we had 4 or 5 recreation sites up West Harrison Forest Service Road. So it made sense to run a maintenance run up there. So get people out, new people out, and then drop in and, pick up some garbage, make the place look nice. Lovely Saturday out, it's a great thing. It's a lot of fun when it's still running today, same time, same place.
Yeah.
And well known and popular. But yeah, it works pretty good. Again, these things have to be run by locals. And I think we've seen them in Prince George. We've seen them. There was one to Windfall Creek up in Chetwynd. I know we're going to start seeing them in the Okanagan.
Yeah.
And we've seen them in Vancouver Island too.
Yep. Yeah. We've had a few around here as well too in the Kamloops area. Corey did one last year, and it's a great way for people to meet other like-minded people. So one of the neat programs that the association has is a Wheeling Wisely program. So speaking of people new to four-wheeling, or even for those old guys like myself and yourself, what is Wheeling Wisely and what's it all about?
Well, Wheeling Wisely is our invention of an off-road driver and recovery training program. So way back in the Four-Wheel Drive Association days, a man named Henry Gillick essentially built the driver's education program in concert with the BC Driving Council of those days. We're talking late 70s, early 80s. And
the orange binder. I have one of those.
Oh, the orange binder?
Yeah, I've got one of those.
Yeah. So for many years, we had a line item in our budget, education, $2,000, like a lot of money, 2,000, because we didn't have any money.
Yep.
And it was always there, but we never got to it because we were busy building foundation footings for the organization. Everything from websites to doing stuff like building Hale Creek and the Hatlatch to, tangible things. So it took us a while to get to it. And finally, we hired an organization called the International Four-Wheel Drive Trainers Association in 2018 to come up. And we had a cadre of 17 people that we trained to then build some driving programs, some recovery programs, and then start delivering that to our members. So we did that. We've got 2 programs completed. So we've got a basic driver training program. So this is aimed at people that are new to off-road driving, kind of as a square one, a 101 program. And we have a basic recovery program, which actually has a lot of intermediate concepts. They both do, frankly. These are 1-day program each. So the driver program is 1 day, 8 hours. Same thing for recovery. And we've got an awful lot of information, maybe even too much information in each of these days. But the plus side is that even experienced wheelers like you and I have the ability to take this program and come home not with just one, but a handful of things that we probably didn't know about our vehicle or picking a line or communicating, what have you. Yeah. So since in 2019, we launched our first training program for our members. That was in the Prince George area. And since in the last 3 years, I think we've trained over 400 now.
Wow.
So I'm really pleased because we only trained 17 instructors. Of those 17, I think we've got 11 or 12 still active. So that's really good retention as well because, life changes, right?
100%.
You have to be conscious of that in the volunteer world all the time because life isn't easy for anyone and things can change in a moment and change a worldview or a setting, Anyway, 400 people have been trained and we're now trying to make the next step to train the next cadre of trainers so that we can start multiplying. We can't hold enough courses in the lower mainland because demand is so high. So we need more instructors and we need more instructors province wide because again, we need to deliver to the regions, because
not everybody at the coast can come up to Prince George to train or to teach the courses and that, right?
So that's a day's drive each way.
Yeah.
So we're trying to build out our resources in the impossible world that we find ourselves in, like I say. But somehow, I don't know.
Well, they're definitely popular from everything that I've seen, that they're booked up way in advance. But I think, as you mentioned, there's stuff that people have been wheeling for years. We even gather new information from this, and or that things that we forget about. There's a lot of times, like when I sold my Jeep TJ and gone to the Xterra, I had to learn how to drive all over again. And then same thing with going into the Tacoma. There are different vehicles handled differently. And when you're going from a locked vehicle into a stock vehicle, everything's different. But I think it's a great course for anybody that is out in the back roads, for sure.
Well, and at the end of the day, the reason why we wanted to rebuild our education program was because we're seeing vehicles that are sold are very, very capable.
Yep.
So people without much knowledge can get themselves into a whole lot of trouble. And then now they're in really difficult and or dangerous situation. The weather turns, anything. And there's a lot of opportunity for disaster. So we just saw that coming and we want to do what we can for our membership to give them at least a fighting chance. Coming out of the bush and coming home to their family and the people to love.
Yeah, and I think it's a great thing of doing it on the same weekend. Do the basic, the 101 on the Saturday and doing the recovery on the Sunday, just so that way you're only taking up one weekend of not only the trainer's time, but of the participants' time. And hopefully they can retain, 80% of what they're taught, right? So,
or You know, I don't know about you. I've taken a lot of intense courses, like cram factory stuff.
Yeah.
And, I don't even think you come up with 80%, but that's okay because it's like the saying, you know what you know and you know what you don't know, but what you don't know is going to kill you.
Yeah.
So we try to move each of those up a layer, right? So at least you know what you don't know. And then you've got some reason to base your decision on. Maybe I'm going to turn around.
So there's another program that I find quite interesting that I haven't had much involvement with myself, but that's the Wheelers of Tomorrow. And you touched base earlier on about the kids and building the raft. And that's sort of what, from my understanding, Wheelers of Tomorrow is getting those kids out and learning how, about enjoying the outdoors and responsibility and stuff like that. Maybe you can fill us a bit more about the Wheelers of Tomorrow.
Sure. One of my longtime colleagues, my right-hand person, so to speak, for a lot of years is Chris Wheeler.
Yep.
He's taken care of so many different things, critical volunteer. She always wanted to get a kids program going. And our goals, we looked at the program were, of course, to get kids out 4x4ing. So we used to have big sisters, big brothers run, or we'd take kids out for a day, do a little bit of 4x4ing. And as well as anyone, a person's first 4x4 trip where you do some real gnarly stuff, which is not that gnarly, but it doesn't matter. You get the ear to ear grin, right?
Yep.
You get the best day of my life, which is probably why people are so attracted to the friends they meet in their first trips. Mm-hmm. But it's a spectacular day. It's a special memory, and it will be there for a long time. We did runs with burnfund.org and burn survivors. 3 of those now we've done over the last 10 years. Again, spectacular, where you take kids that have never been out for a 4x4 ride and, maybe a barbecue lunch or something like that. Spectacular. So we wanted to combine events like this with maybe some wheeling families inside of our organization, maybe get families out together so they can meet like-minded people and enjoy this recreation like you and I. So we'd do things like at the park, you come out and you just have a picnic, maybe a dunk tank and bouncy castle, and we just have some fun things like that. We tried one of those. A lot of these things have been interrupted by COVID, so I don't mean to say we tried one of those and it just stopped, but
right,
there's a black hole in between here and there that kind of slowed things down. We did the wheeling and picnic event. There's been sleepover and movie night wheeling. This year, there was a number that have been rained out. Like I'm talking 3 inches of rain overnight rained out.
We don't have that problem up here. We don't know what rain is.
No. Yeah. And we also kind of saw another aspect, Wes, to be honest, was for many years doing our cleanups, we would come across, the typical party waste or God forbid, a grad camp. And I know I can remember, it's a long time ago and it's foggy, but when I was young, we didn't exactly have everything figured out. And when you were graduating high school, it was kind of there was a party involved there that kind of ended childhood, and then you were an adult, and there's a transition period there. So I've read in the news here numerous times where somebody comes across a grad camp waste and they see grad from whatever high school, and then they publicly shame them. And then I've seen cases where the school has gone so far as to cancel the grad dance and then shaming the kids. And we know that we're only dealing with a subset here. And we also know, or at least I do, what I see is I can just see everybody getting up in the morning in various states of feeling awful and being the last one, kind of like a musical chairs thing. You're up and it's a big mess and you just want to go home. You go home and then all of this shit hits the media and there's nothing you can do about it. God knows how you got there. Anyway, I always hated that. I hated it. So we thought we could, in our perfect world, we would reach out to high schools and perhaps assist them with a plan. Well, how's this for naive? They could assist them with a plan, and other adults wouldn't go, "You're facilitating youth drinking and all this stuff." Well, this stuff's going to happen anyway. You know it.
Yep.
Imagine a grad camp going with a washroom plan, a garbage pickup plan, probably a first aid plan, and some sober transport in case something happened
Yep.
when you're remote in the bush. A food plan, even, like a water plan. It wouldn't hurt, I don't think. I think it would go a long way to not only let them have their rite of passage, but also let them come through without being publicly shamed. And then perhaps the crowning of their graduation, their prom, isn't canceled. Like that stuff just horrifies me.
Yeah. Agree with you on that. And I think what you're talking about, having some sort of a plan, is definitely a right step in the right direction. It's just a matter of getting people behind it, and it'll just take time.
Well, you can't get your parents to help you.
No, no.
Right? I mean, so it'd be nice to have some adults at least recognize that, well, there's probably a better way,
Yep. Yeah.
So anyway, a bit of a sidetrack, but we haven't got that one off the ground yet.
I think it's a great idea. But I think going back to the whole other stuff that you are currently have been doing with the Wheelers of Tomorrow, definitely getting some of these young kids out. As you know, I grew up in a 4x4 family, and every time I saw a lifted Jeep or something like that, my smile was so big, right? So get these kids hooked now, and eventually they'll become future members. And
so
hopefully,
hey, we've got an RC car club.
Oh yeah,
that's 4x4 RCs and stuff.
Yeah,
that's joining up as a member club.
That is awesome.
Well, they've got the West Coast Scale Trail that they've been building by Eagle Mountain.
Yeah.
And they've come out to a couple of our events, our show and shine this year and our toy run, and set up RC courses. And so the kids are just glued on this stuff. Like, this is cool, man.
Yep.
So here you've got the little trucks going, and you've got the big trucks in the field. And
that is awesome.
Cool.
It's not just young kids that are hooked on those things either. It's a lot of adults are totally into those.
Well, I say young kids, they're under 30 now, aren't they?
That's true.
No offense to all the young kids. Sorry.
It's funny. We've got there's a few rock crawl, RC guys here in Kamloops, and Dion Rosser is one of them. And his detail that he builds, he 3D prints these little things, and he did a 22 RE motor that had even like the little details on it of like the PCV valve and all, like his detail that he does in the crawler little cars is just absolutely insane. It's all these little bolts. You look at the valve cover and you can see every single individual bolt, and
something wrong with these people.
I don't have the patience for that myself.
I look at the guys that, I've got a good friend, well, a number of them, that build like refurbishments of antique vehicles.
Yeah.
And their attention to detail is just sickening. I don't know how they do it. I wheel my stuff and I live in a rainforest. And like, these things are not achievable. Yet I see it, and I don't
have the patience for some of that stuff myself. But that's a whole nother thing too, is let's go back to the show and shine. That's something we haven't talked about. So you guys have a big show and shine every August, I think, July or August.
Every July.
Yeah, every July. And I think when I didn't go down last year, but the years that I did go down, I think you guys are pushing 350 or 400 vehicles.
Yeah,
for the show.
I think 450 was our highest one year.
Yeah,
about 1,000 people, 450 trucks, 400 trucks. Yeah.
Yep. So obviously we're going to go full bore with plans for that again this year.
Yeah, July 15th.
Oh, perfect.
Fraser River Heritage Park.
Yeah, if you guys do have the chance to attend it, it's definitely worth it. You meet a lot of people that are four-wheel enthusiasts. There's some of the supporting vendors are there. There's door prizes galore. And, you buy a bunch of tickets and hopefully you come away with some really good prizes. There's winches given away. There's fridges. There's all kinds of, there's probably some tires,
tents, rooftop tents.
Yeah, rooftop tents. And that's not the only reason for going. It's camaraderie, right? It's going there to check out the other vehicles. You've got, you got the mud bog guys there. You've got the Jeep guys and the Nissan guys, and it's vehicles that you don't normally see as well, right? There's some very show quality vehicles that are there. And
Very nice work for sure.
yeah. And we're starting to see people come from other areas, from Kamloops or Kelowna or Merritt or whatever. So you're seeing other vehicles that you don't see all the time. So yeah.
They're starting to come from farther away. We had one fellow from Texas.
Wow.
After the BC Overland Rally. Yeah, the draw is amazing. It's the best draw that I've seen for these one-day shows. The draw is so good that I consider resigning because I can't buy tickets.
Yeah, it's incredible. I've been blown away the couple times I have been down. And like I say, even if you're from the interior, it's worth making that trip down and make a weekend out of it, with the wife or whatever. And it's a lot of fun and a lot of really neat vehicles and some really cool prizes for sure. So you're also a board member of the Outdoor Recreation Council of BC, are you not?
Yes.
So I know that we've been talking more about the Four-Wheel Drive Association of BC, but let's maybe talk quickly about the Outdoor Recreation Council of BC and what that group is all about.
So the Outdoor Recreation Council of British Columbia is a provincial organization representing provincial recreation organizations, essentially. So Four-Wheel Drive Association of BC is a member, same as ATV BC, BC Off-Road Motorcycle Association, Snowmobile Federation, Federation of Mountain Clubs, Trails BC, nature hiking groups, biking groups, mountain biking, kayaking.
The horse people.
Yeah, Horse Council BC, back of the horsemen. But really all the groups. And then there's regional clubs, so local clubs that aren't a provincial organization. They're not voting members, but we still represent them. And the goal is with the Outdoor Recreation Council is to look at recreation at a high level that impacts all recreation and then advocates on behalf of them to government. So it's difficult to find the dividing line of where, like, a member club, like a Four-Wheel Drive Association, should take care of your interests and where the Outdoor Recreation Council should look out for your interests. There's always work on those margins, but so we work on things like the Provincial Trails Advisory Body and the Provincial Trails Plan. That's been an ongoing creation that's never really matured, but it's been around for about 10 years. So the Outdoor Rec Council co-chairs that with the representatives from government. We're working on trying to figure out what reconciliation is and how to approach it so we can kind of advise our members on protocol and perhaps, I don't want to use the word strategy, but just a way of engaging and building a relationship so that you're talking about trails or rec sites that you're not starting from scratch with wanting something.
Right.
Better to build a relationship and then work with a group or a nation than to just dive in and say, I need this or I want this. I'd have to flip through my notes to think of what I was working on. But it's really what that is. It's looking at lobbying rec sites and trails or lobbying BC Parks or lobbying the government for funding for those agencies because they're notoriously underfunded.
Yep.
So
I think it really brings to the forefront of our earlier conversation about working together with other organizations. So whether they be the hikers or the mountain bikers, I mean, obviously in some of your meetings, I'm sure there's various different opinions, but it's the fact of working together and building that relationship for all outdoor recreation, users.
Yeah. Well, there's no shortage of conflict in the world. And if you don't have a relationship with your neighbor and something arises, it's really difficult to build a relationship while you're in conflict.
Yeah.
However, if you have a pretty good relationship, a little bit of conflict you generally deal with respectfully and timely. And the same case applies to recreation groups because everyone knows that in the backcountry, we all have almost the very same interests. I've often commented that you'd be hard pressed to tell the difference, or who was the non-motorized advocate and who was the motorized advocate, if me and my truck was beside the president of North Shore Mountain Bike Association in his truck, because we both have Toyota 4x4s with rooftop tents and way too much stuff. But he might have a bike, and he's the mountain biker, and I'm the 4x4 guy. Yet, one thing I always stress in these environments is every recreationist utilizes a 4-wheel drive vehicle to access his trailhead or her trailhead.
Yep.
Or a Subaru, right?
Yep.
And this is a fact. So no matter whether you hike, kayak, climb mountains, deal with horses or quads or motorcycles, you've got a 4x4 vehicle, and that's carting your stuff to where you want to do your recreation.
Yep.
We're all really the same.
We had a really good conversation last week with the guys from Overland North, which is an Overland Expo style festival in Ontario. They've got 3 of those in Ontario. And they said that they're seeing a lot of like van life people, and they're seeing a real mix of people at their events. And we're discussing how the average 4-wheel drive user is not just out there 4-wheeling. There might be camping. Take like myself. I'll be camping, I'll be hiking, I'll be kayaking, I'll be mountain biking, whatever. And so the average 4-wheeler or overlander, say, is not just doing one thing. A lot of them are doing multiple things, even on the same weekend. And that's just exactly to your point that, they said that a lot of times one guy's talking to his neighbor and he's, hey, what's this overland thing? And then the guy's a mountain biker and they're talking about things. And he's like, okay, yeah, I guess actually I'm a overlander, because he's doing all these things. Right. So
I'm a kayaker.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
I got one of those.
But yeah, it really brings a point home that, a lot of these, we all are doing so many different hobbies that,
well, our recreation, right? What do we identify with? And I guess we're just kind of weird. We identify with the 4x4 part of it as well, rather than other people look at that as a tool to access their trailhead.
Yep.
Well, surprise, surprise. That's the same thing.
So speaking of conflict, I've heard through the rumor mill that you are building a Land Cruiser with an electric motor.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't have any electric motors. I'm not opposed to it.
There you go.
I just drove a Rivian.
Oh, yeah? What do you think?
I drove a Rivian down in New Mexico, and it is some kind of machine.
Yeah. I want to drive one. I'm really interested in this. I don't like the fact that they're pushing it on us, but I am interested in electric vehicle segment.
Yeah. Well, if and when it works for range, I'd be hard pressed to get into my manual diesel because of my range.
Yeah.
I can go in the mountains and with the same amount of fuel as a gasser, I've got near twice the time to run my vehicle because we're not doing miles per gallon anymore. We're doing hours per whatever.
Yep.
Hours of runtime. But the electrical vehicles are getting close if they're anything like the Rivian. So I happen to know a couple of the guys that were translating how 4x4s should work and feel to the programming engineers that were feeding information into the computers of the truck.
Oh, yeah.
So that was an important part to get the feel and the movement of and the coordination of all the electrics to make it feel like an actual 4x4, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's one thing I have heard is that some of the people with, the 4xE Jeeps or other vehicles that do have electric power is that it's a little bit of a different driving experience because it's instant torque and there's a few things that they have to learn to drive again. But you take a look at a Rivian where there's 4 motors and the fact that, you can basically be locked, right? So it's going to be interesting. I think the next 10 years is really going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see if they can get that for lack of better terms, mileage up between the charges.
But it's pretty close now. And it's really weird to have all your vehicle systems on a tablet in the dash and you're just kind of wandering around on the desktop to find off-road mode or rally mode or what kind of crazy stuff do I want to do here?
It's going to be interesting for us old guys to sit there and figure it out.
Where's the radio?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I want buttons. I want big, bulky buttons.
Yeah, I like the volume like it.
Yeah, exactly. It was hard enough getting used to the push start on my Tacoma, but I have to admit, I like not having the keys rattle around all the time. So
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. Bouncing off a little bit more off topic. When you're out camping, what kind of food do you eat? Are you like do you better than you do at home? Or are you like a guy like G from BC where he sits there around the campfire eating sausage?
I'm blessed to eat well all the time. So at home, we eat very well. And camping, I also eat very well. I like cooking outside.
Yeah.
So I learned how to cook before I left the house when I was a kid. So I have half a chance. And
That's
my
good.
wife Brenda's taught me quite a bit as well. So
yeah,
I do have my cast frying pan, and I do cook salmon and rice or steak or ribs or
nice.
a bit on the carnivore side. So
no, that's great. A lot of it just comes down to some of the prep and stuff like that, right? So myself, sometimes I'm really good like that, and then some days I'm craft dinner.
Well, indeed, sometimes time crunches. So
yeah,
I also have some canned goods for, I have 3 days emergency stash of food in my truck at all times. So I have canned salmon, or I have chili, or I have what have you, and some soups.
Yeah.
So if it's a cold morning and I don't really feel like cooking and I want to get on the road, maybe I'll make a soup because it warms you up or flow, right? Late arrival at camp, you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, you don't have the hour to cook or whatever, right? So we are going to have a couple guys on probably in the next month or two that are chefs, and they're going to go through some camp cooking ideas. So I'm really looking forward to that because I can always gain more knowledge in cooking for sure.
Yeah, well, I like cooking and I love eating, so
there you go.
Usually do fairly well, off grid cooking.
Yeah, no, that's great. So the last question we ask every guest is, what Canadian would you like to listen to on the 4x4 Canada podcast?
Well, what Canadian would I like to listen to? Well, I mentioned a name earlier. Hard to get a hold of. Henry Gillick. He's in his 80s now, I think.
Yeah.
Heck of a character.
I'm sure Henry's got, he's got 30 years of stories, 30, 40 years of stories.
Yeah. I see him mostly every year at the BC Sportsman Show. He'll come by the booth and see how the Four-Wheel Drive Association is doing, because he was heavily invested for, must have been close to 2 decades. So, So I guess I'll stick with Henry. He's a heck of
he'd be a really interesting guy. I agree. He'd be a really interesting guy to talk to based on not only his 4-wheel drive experience, but like you say, creating the driver program and just the general years that he put into the association. He'd be
founding member and education director for ages. Yeah.
That's actually one of the reasons that I created the podcast, was to talk to some of our elders and to preserve some of the stories. I'm talking to Roger Manson, Bob Green. That's another guy on my list for sure. And I was up talking to, although I didn't record it, but I was up talking to Rocky Weinstein the other day, and about his Jeeps and dune buggies. And after Al passed away, who was a former president of the association, he passed away last summer, just got me really thinking that, like my dad passed away and Al passed away, and a lot of these guys are starting to get older and they're starting to go by the wayside. So I think we really need to talk to them and save some oral history from them. So,
well, good on you, Wes, for doing this. I know I mentioned it in passing before. We had similar idea and COVID kind of got in the way.
Yep.
And I just haven't gotten the initiative. So good on you for doing this.
Well, thank you. It's been a learning curve, but that's the thing, as long as we're always learning, right? So, and I also wanted to showcase organizations like the 4-Wheel Drive Association of BC, as well as Canadian businesses, TMR Racing in Ontario, or, Sky Tents, or any of those companies, because I think we really need to support Canadian companies.
Totally.
That's a big thing.
Ontario Federation of Four-Wheel Drive. Do you have anybody there?
I have tried contacting them, but I have not gotten any response.
So I think Peter Wood is their president.
Okay.
Good guy to talk to as well.
Yeah. I'll try getting a hold of him as well too, because I think they're, same sort of concept of what we're doing here. I think the Four-Wheel Drive Association is got a bit more members and some other things going on, but they've really got some neat projects back there with, they do a lot of maintenance with the snowmobile trails and other trails out there as well. So if you guys are in Ontario, if you're listening and you're in Ontario, definitely look up these guys, because they're trying to save our trails and our access to public lands as well.
Yeah, quite active. Yeah, so
yeah,
good group to support.
Well, Kim, thank you very much for coming on. Once again, we're talking to Kim Reeves, the president of the Four-Wheel Drive Association of BC. And we definitely thank you and appreciate you coming on and spend some time with us.
Well, thanks a lot, Wes. Thanks for having me, and I appreciate your time.